Hey guys, thanks for watching my channel today. My name's Don and my channel is all about fishing after the age of 70. I recently had an opportunity to have a bit of a conversation with a couple of my buddies about who the best fisherman, who the best bass fisherman is, uh, who history will record as being perhaps the greatest fisherman of all time. I happen to believe that that title goes to one guy and one guy only, and that's to a gentleman named Buck Perry. Now, I had the opportunity to spend some time working with Buck and working with his associates, and we had a lot of fun there for a short period of time. We sold a lot of fishing lures. I learned a great deal. Actually bought a spoon plugging boat. This was back in the 70s. And we used to put seminars on Friday nights, and we show slideshows of all the fish that Buck caught going around from lake to lake all over the United States, proving to people time and time again that there were fish there and that they could be caught. But the purpose of this video today is to really talk about why Buck Perry was the greatest fisherman of all time. And let me just say this right up front. It wasn't because he caught the most bass. I mean, I want to get that straight right up front. He probably did, but it wasn't because he caught the most bass. It wasn't because he caught the biggest fish. Uh, but but the reason that he is considered to be the greatest fisherman is because he figured out where the bass actually live. And then he proved it. And he did this a long time ago, long before most of the guys that are fishing tournaments today were even born. Back when Buck was a young boy, one of the earliest memories that he was able to share with most of us in the seminars, he said, I could still remember back when I was a young boy going out and fishing with my dad, and we'd be casting these old lures in towards the shoreline, reeling them back, casting them in, reeling them back. And one day I told my dad that we were fishing in the wrong direction. The fish were behind us. And of course he kind of laughed and he thought, what does a young kid know? But he knew a great deal, even at a young age. Before before Buck came along, most people assumed there was only one way to fish, and that was to fish right off the bank. Not because the fish were there, but because we were. If you could see it, you could fish it. And if you couldn't see it, you just ignored it. Buck Perry changed all that. Most anglers back then believed bass lived in shallow water and spent all their time there. And Buck said, no, that's not true. The only reason that you believe that is because you're a shallow water fisherman. What Buck discovered, and this was revolutionary at the time, Buck discovered that bass relate first to structure, not cover, not lily pads, not docks, not stumps, structure. And so you understand clearly what structure is. Structure would be drop-offs, points, humps, channels, different changes in the depth. Things that you couldn't necessarily see, but the fish could see or feel. And once you understood that, fishing then stops becoming luck and starts becoming all about location. And here's the part people forget. Buck Perry didn't guess. He didn't theorize. He tested over and over and over, lake after lake after lake, season after season. When I met Buck for the first time, he was an old man. At least I thought he was an old man. I mean, I was in probably my early 20s, and at the time, Buck was probably in his 60s, but he just seemed like an old man. And he'd been fishing a long time. There were a lot of write-ups about him. A lot of the guys back in those days, I mean, he was a big name in the fishing industry because He had done things that were literally revolutionary. And again, long before depth finders, long before electric motors, long before, you know, the different electronics that we have today that make fishing so much easier. He figured out a lot of things that people laughed at, couldn't believe. But he figured out that bass move vertically rather than horizontally. In other words, bass are constantly moving in this direction as opposed to up and down. A lot of people thought they were like crappies, that they would hide or hang out at different depths. But bass also follow predictable seasonal depth routes. In other words, different times of the year, they travel in different areas, usually dependent upon the depths. They don't disappear, when you think the bite dies. Chances are they just relocated. And most bass live offshore, far more than most people realize or even begin to understand. Does that sound familiar? Well, it should, because every modern fishing pattern comes straight out of the Buck Perry playbook. But let's talk about the spoon plug. A lot of people think that Buck invented it just to catch fish. They'd be dead wrong. The spoon plug was a measuring device. Buck used it to determine the exact depth, to feel the bottom composition, to trace underwater contours, and to help map entire lakes without the use of electronics. Long before the side scan, long before GPS, Buck Perry was literally drawing underwater maps with a fishing rod. And he did it all based on using the spoon plugs, the different size spoon plugs running at different depths. That's not luck, that's mastery. And he created this lure himself, and he created it strictly for this purpose. What really separates Buck Perry from everyone else is this. He didn't sell tricks. He sold a system that said, learn the lake, find the structure, understand seasonal movements or migrations, control the depth, fish where the bass lives, not where fishermen crowd. And believe me, this system works today as well as it did 60 years ago. Florida grass lakes, highland reservoirs, northern natural lakes, doesn't matter. Bass are bass. Here's something else that matters. Buck Perry didn't chase trophies. He didn't chase TV time. He didn't chase sponsors. He chased understanding. Buck never fished a tournament in his entire life. And although he was, getting up there by the time tournaments really got off the ground, he could have fished them, but he chose not to. He wasn't about winning or getting attention to himself. He was all about understanding. He taught thousands of anglers how to think, not just how to fish. And if an angler today talks about offshore fishing, ledges, seasonal movement, breaking down unfamiliar water, they're using Buck Perry's ideas, whether they know his name or not. And here's a line that ruffles feathers. Modern electronics didn't replace Buck Perry. They simply proved him right. Forward-facing sonar didn't invent offshore bass. They were there the whole time. It just showed us what Buck already knew and what Buck was trying to tell us 50, 60, and 70 years ago. And the best anglers today, they still rely on the same fundamentals Buck taught way back when. Location first, depth control, and structure over scenery. So when people ask me, who is the greatest fisherman of all time? And believe me, this pops up from time to time. There's some great fishermen out there. I won't dispute that. Guys like Roland Martin, they're one of a kind. Ricky Clone, my personal idol. I think the guy walks on water. Bill Dance, one of the funniest bass fishermen. that ever lived. And by the way, I believe he's the guy that caught the very first bass in one of Ray Scott's tournaments. They're all great fishermen, and they're all basically heroes of mine and all the other bass fishermen that I know. But if I had to define the best, the greatest, they wouldn't be in that category. Uh, and it's not because I worked for Buck. Uh, it's not because I have any, personal allegiance to him. It's the fact that I truly believed the things that he was teaching us back then that made so much sense that now, as we move into the year of electronics, I guess is what I would call it. Now that we're where we are, and now that everybody's so hung up on fishing deep water, fishing offshore, it just simply proves that he was always right. Because that's where he said the home of the fish is. He constantly said the fish live in deep water. They don't live in the shallows. They move to the shallows for two reasons. They move to the shallows to feed, and they move to the shallows to mate. And typically they move along a structured route, a migration route. And once you figure that out, you figured out the hardest part of fishing. So that's my take on Buck Perry. That's my take on the greatest fisherman that ever lived. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame a number of years ago. I believe he should have gone in even quicker than, when they did induct him. But he was an incredible fisherman. And he really never sought the fame or the attention that is passed on to so many of the anglers that fish, the Bassmaster Classic or some of the other big tournaments. Buck was a fisherman, and he was a fisherman's fisherman. He was there to learn and to teach, and he did a great job of it. And by the way, his book is still very popular today, Spoon Plugging. You can pick it up by going to his website, Buck Perry. You can buy copies of it on eBay. He also has an extended learning course, which I still have a copy of, one of the originals that I got back 50 or 60 years ago. And it's an incredible learning tool where Buck gets into so much detail, so many of his beliefs that are still being disputed today, but just the things that he believed, and he believed in them strongly. He was a great fisherman. And, I can't believe how often I get into discussions with people and they've never even heard of Buck Perry. And that's a shame. Because we all get old, we all die off. But Buck brought so much to the fishing industry that people should know, at least know who he is and what he accomplished. So anyway, I hope this video hits home with a lot of folks. If you haven't read his book and you're a bass fisherman, it'll be the best 10 or 15 bucks you ever spent. He writes in plain English. He calls a spade, and he goes right to the point. It's not a real flowery book, but you'll enjoy reading it, and it'll become your Bible as far as fishing goes. So I would encourage you to get yourself a copy. And again, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and if you have any comments, please leave them below. I enjoyed making this video, and I really miss Buck. Sometimes I wish I could just pick up a phone and call him with a question I have, but those days are gone, and he's gone with them. But he's left an incredible legacy behind him. So thanks again. Have a great afternoon or a great evening, and I'll talk with you soon.